Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed.
What is up, everybody? My name is James D. Fiore, and this is Blackballed. Baseball was my sport growing up, and I was kind of a shit disturber when I played baseball. I was one of those kids where if the infield dirt was like of the dry variety, you know, there's like sometimes it was sandy and chalky, and the wind was just so, and I was playing I was leading off second base. Sometimes I would just gingerly kick dirt, and it would puff up into the air, but then the wind would take it into the face of the shortstop. And it was a beautiful system. I felt really proud of that until I got caught doing it by an umpire. And but I'm happy that I found out just before the show started that my guest and I share the same level of respect for the men in blue. I don't want to speak for them. Please welcome, I'm really excited about today's interview. Please welcome to the show, former Blue Jays manager, Gibby, John Gibbons. John, how are you, buddy?
James, hey, I'm doing good, man. Hey, what a difference in opening music you're playing too, man. You're rapping and then you slowed it down. So, but I can tell you're a rebel just by that music, man, that intro. But I'm doing good.
I'm a hip hop head. I don't know what that means. It was funny because I'm reading your book right now. Sorry, your book, by the way. I love it. It sounds like you, so that you captured your own voice, which is always a good thing.
Well, you like it, good. I'm glad you like it.
Yeah. The book is called Gibby: Tales of a Baseball Lifer, and as a person that spent 12 years playing baseball and never making it anywhere because I wasn't as good as you were. But I remember the culture of baseball, and you spell it out really beautifully in your book, especially in the early going. And then what was really interesting, almost right off the bat, I think you mentioned this, that your first competitive baseball game was in Newfoundland.
Yeah.
And you're from San Antonio originally, right?
Just
to make sure. Yeah.
Well, hey, my mom and dad are both from Boston, right? I tell everybody, everybody says, well, you're low key, nice guy. I said, but they're both from Boston. That's the asshole in me, see?
Okay.
The Boston blood. But no, my dad joined the military, and he was stationed up in Goose Bay, Labrador, around the time I was 7 or 8. And so I played my first Little League game up there. Yeah, that's my introduction.
Do you remember? You guess it's interesting. You probably didn't expect when you were young to have such a good relationship with your neighbor to the north. That must have been kind of a surprise to you, really, in hindsight, right? And you said in your book, let me just make sure I have the right one here. It was a rough start for me in Toronto. I had to shack up with the pitching coach, sleep on the couch, but I could walk to the park. Son of a gun, this is not that easy. Quit complaining. I was in the big leagues. After a couple months, I realized I really like the city. I hate to insult Canadians reading this book, but I'm a lot like you in a lot of ways. And just by stating it like that, with that kind of sarcasm and that humor, is kind of Canadian,
Yeah, James. Yeah, you know what? I was young when I lived there, but there was something about it I liked. And my mother would tell me, that was one of her and my dad's favorite assignments. And people would tell him, how did you get stationed up in Goose Bay, Labrador? Is the Air Force punishing you? Did you do something wrong? So they send you up there. But she said they loved it. And there was, but the fact that I go back there to play for my first big league job, right? But my first go around, it wasn't, I mean, the team stunk, right? And I got fired. I mean, I got hired when Carlos Tosca got fired late in the year. And I was attached to J.P. Richard. He was a GM at the time. And he came in. He's another Bostonian. He came in. He's brash, and I don't think he was welcomed right away because he'd wear it on his sleeve, and he's a crazy Italian guy, and he'd tell it like it is, right?
Yeah.
And he could be condescending, and so now I'm tied with him, and the team stinks when I took over, and it was I think there was just people were frustrated with the team, all these broken promises. The team's not any good year after year, right? And they're being built up, and so naturally. in front office and managers are usually the scapegoat. So I'd walk down the streets and people would recognize me naturally because, you're on TV every night with doing an interview or something, right?
Hey,
And they would
Gibby,
look
what
at
the
me.
fuck is going on with the bullpen?
Oh yeah, exactly. Nice move. But but they catch your eye. They look away, right?
Yeah.
And James, there was one spot just down the block from where I lived. It was a Tim Hortons there, right? And so I go down there.
Shocker.
Yeah, and I'd walk down there. You know what? Actually, to the right, it was at the end of the block. There was a Starbucks and the Tim Hortons at the other. So I went there. I was really trying to be Canadian.
That could literally be anywhere in Toronto. But go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. But the only guys that would say hi to me, and there were some homeless guys who would always sit on the corner there at the. It was on King and John or anyways, right over there, yeah. and they would say, "Hey, Gibby, how you doing? How'd the game go last night?" Right, and I bring them out, flip a loony or toonie, or bring them a donut or something. Those are my guys, man, and they were always cool to me. And then when the second go round, when things finally, it took a while there, it started going well. I'd see people on the streets and everybody smile and we'd shake hands and take a picture and BS. So baseball, professional sports, man, it's all about winning. If you win, things are good. People like you. If you don't, you stink. They're not your favorite guy.
It's hard for people that don't play baseball to kind of understand what I mean when I say this, but there's more theater in baseball or something, and you're the most unique person on the field. You were a catcher when you played, and you're the only person facing in that direction on your team other than the hitter. And, I always sort of admired catchers because it takes, first of all, it takes courage to even try it when you're young, right? Because a bat is swinging where you're trying to catch a ball, and it's hard to compute that when you're 6 or something. And then it becomes, I know knuckleballers wear the crown for the craziest position in baseball, but only a person as crazy as a catcher could catch a knuckleballer, right? Isn't it sort of like that? Isn't that the pecking order?
Oh yeah. Well, first off, guys that are catchers, they're usually your worst athletes. They put them back there, the squatty fat kid, and I tell you what, when I lived in Houston, this was after Goose Bay. My dad came back to the States, and I was playing on a little league team, and they made me the catcher, right? And you used to back then, had the full helmet and the mask for the little kids. So I go back there, and the first pitch thrown to me, the kid swings, it hits me in the back of the head with the bat, right? But I had that helmet on, knocked me down, and I thought, this is perfect for me, man. I was a catcher ever since. I loved it, So. Yeah.
There was baseball also lend itself to tricks and things that like I always wondered. So say I heard someone say once that they love the infield fly rule because it just assumes the worst out of everybody.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly.
Like we're all a bunch of liars, like traversing this chessboard. But the the way that baseball has kind of luck sewn into it. What did they say in Bull Durham? One more seeing eye single out of 10 at bats, and you're a 300 hitter, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Hey, perfect example. This is going to be fresh on everybody's mind. That playoff game against Seattle, right? That at the end of the second game, the clincher, perfectly placed ball. If it was a little higher, there's your infield fly, right, or whatever. Yeah. If I don't remember how many outs there were, but. It was perfectly placed where the two infielders going back and then Springer coming in, can't get to it, right? And that's just, like you say, like an inch, the ball rolls through the middle of the infield. It's a base hit. Otherwise you're out, you're not a 300 hitter anymore. So that is kind of one of the beauties of baseball. Crazy things happen, nothing you can do about it. And that's why if you have the best athletes, you win usually.
The umpire thing. If one of your chapters of your book is, "Hey, I love umpires" or something like that, like it's pretty sarcastic. But this stuck out to me. This was the most hilarious sentence. Like I laughed out loud, and I think I might have spit some sandwich out or something. I have never gone out to argue just to argue. I have always been angry about something.
Yeah, no, that's the truth right there.
Yeah, but it doesn't sound like a good reason though. Do you know what I mean? Like I was angry, of course.
No, you know what I mean by that, James. Just like, if I got to go out and argue to motivate my guys, something's wrong with them, man. You know what? You know what I mean? But this is what we were always known as. We were a whining team. We had some of the biggest whiners in the game: Batista, Donaldson, were two of the top, right? They were a lot. I mean, the two best players in the game, two of them, and they were right a lot of times, right? But then there's times that the umpires get tired of it, right? And then you get the other dugout complaining, and they hated us because of it, right?
Yeah.
But it worked against us, but it also got us some calls. But I always believe if you want your players to fight for you, you better fight for them, right? And so if there's some bad calls being made against our guys, I got to fight for them. Not only it's not I don't feel it. That's the important thing to do, and we're all trying to win. But you know what? I can honestly say I never went out there to put on a show for that way. Usually, if the team's playing crap or they're sticking it to us, and I don't want to watch any more of it anyway, you go out there, you get chucked. And you give them the magic word as you cuss at them, you cuss directly at them, call them something, you're gone. They usually give you a piece, but it's that's what's missing from the game too. I think, though, wouldn't you agree with the instant replay?
Yeah, a little bit. Like, there's the theater. That's the theater, basically.
Yeah,
like
right.
you have. It's. I think you've been ejected 53 times from games, and it is. You've been able to sort of become like a almost like an icon of like people who stand up against umpires, because isn't it like in the shortest amount of games? Like I think Bobby Cox has like 160 ejections, but he's played like a million more games than you have, right?
Well, yeah, and then you got to remember too, replay cut some of them down. You know what? I've been called angry before, angry young man, so I got some of that in me. But hey, you know what? I'll also tell those guys out there, James, when you make a good call, hey, you did a great job, whatever, all that. But it's tough to hold it in sometimes.
I feel like you kind of made it so that you had to earn your right to sort of like be that guy, because in the book you talk, your dad was a military guy. You had a lot of respect for for your coaches, and it seemed like you had a good respect for authority. What went wrong, John?
No, if I'm going to hold myself accountable, I got to hold everybody accountable, don't I? The umpire's got to be accountable.
That's right.
Hey, I grew up that way. I grew up in a very disciplined household, military father, and I grew up in Texas, where it's yes sir, no sir, and you do it my way or the highway, basically. In a lot of ways, I think we're missing a lot of that nowadays. But you say I kind of. I don't fight authority necessarily, but I question it sometimes, and that's not that we're talking about umpires here, but I question the calls. But overall, I don't think you can be blinded by that. Maybe because I was held down so much as a young kid, now I'm questioning everything. I don't know.
A little taste of power, and that's it, right? Like,
oh yeah, power corrupts, man. Hey, just look at the government in the United States of America. You want to talk about power corrupts? There you go, brother.
I don't know if I'm allowed to comment on that because we're so small militarily that I don't want anything back. Tucker Carlson just advised the United States to liberate us from Justin Trudeau somehow. So, I guess. I found it fascinating that Rusty Staub took you to your first hockey game.
Yeah.
That's kind of neat when sports crosses over like that, when you're able to sort of like see a different type of sport culture, because that's really what it is in Montreal. You mentioned in the book how it's not really big in San Antonio, but you're in the mecca of hockey basically when you're in Montreal, right? So,
oh yeah. Well, San Antonio has a minor league team. I think it used to be the Florida Panthers, one of the leagues. But yeah, Rusty Legrand Orange, because he was a legend up there in he got some tickets. I don't know how he did it, because when I was in Toronto, they would never swap out Leafs tickets. You could never get any Leaf tickets. Usually the baseball team and the hockey or the basketball, they exchange things so everybody can go. You could not get a Leaf ticket. You probably know this better than anybody, to save your life, man. I couldn't believe it. I thought we must be really bad in town here.
You were a cool manager though, because there was always a little bit of more drama. You were kind of a cool chess player with your bullpen and stuff. The bat flip, I loved it, and I thought it was largely generational. The split, I thought it was like older people were like a little bit less likely to endorse it, and younger people were like, "Who cares? It was adrenaline. It looked cool. Fuck it." Do you know what I mean? Where were you on that? I don't remember listening to a quote of where you were. I have a good idea, I think, but where were you?
Well, you know what? To be honest with you, I didn't see it actually happen. because I was watching the ball, make sure the thing got out. But I know exactly what happened. You know what? I've always been they call you the old school, the traditionalist. You know, I don't like hot dogging, but this was so different, man. This was like 23 years of frustration in a country and primarily Toronto. They're built up, you know, and in the face of the franchise is doing it. If I'm on the other team, that doesn't bother me one bit. You know, I tip my hat to the guy, you know. Yeah. And the worst part about the Texas Rangers, they celebrated home runs more than anybody, you know, and they got up and, you know, and they're whatever. And so that's what, you know, it was so bull BS, you know.
It's funny, just the contrast in American sports. Like, you know, look at basketball. You know, basketball, like you know, you can go hockey, you can fight, you can go crazy and fight. And then like baseball, a guy like tosses a bat a little and people are like, oh my goodness. It's like the Wimbledon of sports or something. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, I'm going to tell you this. You brought up hockey and basketball and on baseball. There's nobody like hockey players, man. They can baseball, hockey. I mean, tennis, the basketball, no comparison to the toughness and the discipline of those guys, man. You know what?
Fair enough. Yeah. I did call baseball the theatrical league. So I know.
You're 100% right. Yeah. But, you know, but the game has turned into a show and they encourage that and it rubs a lot of people wrong, but it's to sell tickets and all that. But if you're gonna be a hot dog and you're gonna celebrate a little bit too much, then you shouldn't be worried about getting one in the ribs, right?
See, I'm one of those guys that I like Dennis Rodman. Do you know what I mean? I like Claude Lemieux. You know, like I like guys that inject a mental pestiness to the game. You know, like I appreciate that because I find it's a skill that not many people have at all. And you know, but in baseball, there's a lot of things that you can do. I remember guys that used to stand in the back of the box and they would stretch. They would be sort of like in the back corner away, like from the plate. And they would stretch and bring their arm up. And then when they would get into their batting stance and the ball, they would fake a bunt. And when they would come back, they would draw a catcher's interference. And it was brilliant. And they never got caught doing it. Did you know all those tricks as the catcher? Like, were you always kind of on the lookout for that kind of stuff?
Well, I'm telling you, you can tell what somebody's doing. You get guys trying to cheat. I mean, they try, you know, they're doing their bat, like you said, they're waving their bat out front. They bring it back. They're trying to pick up your signs you're giving to the catcher, you know, to the pitcher. But, you know, you were talking about those guys doing stretch and all that. But back then, remember those guys used to wear the pants so tight they had to freaking stretch between every pitch, man, because they were skin tight. But, you know, you're always looking for an advantage. You know, if you can steal signs or whatever it is, or get on, you know, if there's certain guys, you know, their swings a little bit longer, but then you're certain guys that you not a lot, but try to do it intentionally. Catcher's got to back up. It's that simple, you know. And but it's a crazy game. I think we're taking the fun out of it a lot with all the analytic stuff. To be honest with you, and we're treating it like a bunch of robots instead of personalities, human beings out there competing and getting after it. And you know, see, you know what you're talking about. You know, baseball used to have all these nicknames now too. You know, do you ever see any nicknames anymore, guys?
No, but I have an idea though. Let's ban the mascot, because it's a leftover from some sort of Carney era. I don't know, like you know.
You don't like that. You don't like that. Go Jays, go cheer now.
No, I mean even the best one is still really whack. The Philadelphia Fanatic,
he's the best, no doubt.
But he still looks like one of those carnival you know, games that you can't win, you know, like that's what he looks like. And
hey, do you remember? I don't know, you might be too young. Back in the was it 70s, 80s, the Pittsburgh Parrot, they used to have a mascot.
Yes,
like this big,
I do remember.
And he was the drug dealer on the team. He would supply. Remember they had the big cocaine problem in the trials and all that back. He was the supplier. Guys would go to Pittsburgh, and he would be a mascot.
Really,
he would deal the.
That news item slipped through the cracks for me. I'm 46. Maybe I was too young, but the pirate mascot for the
that's where a lot of guys were getting their cocaine.
Wow, that means that Darryl Strawberry would have to travel all the way from Manhattan. I'm just kidding. I'm just totally kidding. You grew up with you entered the league around the same time as a lot of those legends, like Gooden and
some years Gooden
and Strawberry. And Lenny Dykstra. Lenny Dykstra kind of felt like he was related to Pete Rose in the way that he approached the game.
He played that way. You know, you know what? Lenny was a roommate of mine a couple years in the minor leagues, right? So I got to know him well. Most compulsive guy I've ever been around, man. and it's led to his own self-destruction. But I have never seen a better leadoff hitter. I've never played with a better leadoff hitter. He played the game all out, all the beat up or whatever. He just had a great feel of playing the game, but he was a wild man. But you could win. I don't think there was a better leadoff hitter in the game at that time.
Do you think that I grew up when I guess I was in high school when McGuire or just starting college when McGuire and Sosa were doing their thing with all those home runs. Do you have an opinion on sort of like the juice era in baseball? Like if it means anything, if we should just look forward, or do you take it personally? Like what are your thoughts on that?
I was kind of playing in that, and it kind of started coming in the late 80s. I'm going, heck, man, I should have got on the stuff, man. I might have had a career, but
yeah. You guys were all doing cocaine, John, at the time, I think. Right? Like,
actually, see, but it just shows you got to have some skill. The steroids alone aren't going to do you anything. But if you have skill and you add that, no, you know what? I look at it this way because I'm speaking from the all the greats, right? That go as far as Hall of Fame and things like that. There's certain guys I put them in the Hall of Fame, man, like Barry Bonds. Right? Put an asterisk by his name and explain, because Barry Bonds was going in the Hall of Fame before. Probably he was such a great player, but even like Pete Rose, okay, we know he wasn't.
That's the worst one. That's the worst one.
Put an asterisk. Yeah, he gambled on baseball, but he's a hit king. Those guys, they're not all choir boys. The guys who've been inducted in the Hall of Fame for years, right? They say Ty Cobb killed somebody or something. I don't know.
That's what I was gonna. I would have loved to see Ty Cobb play. I would have. That would have been a treat. I think. Most hated man in baseball, probably. Was there a most hated man in baseball when you were managing? Besides Jose Batista?
Yeah, I was gonna say, guys, I'm my own team. Gosh, let me think about it. Manny Ramirez wasn't well liked, but he was good. That's the thing. A lot of guys, and these are the great players, and it's not, and maybe their personality rubs you wrong, but the fact that they burn you so many times too, and then they rub it in on you, that's what gets people, But when you're on your team, you love them, right? Hey, Donaldson was that way. He was disliked in the game because you know what? He goes back to theatrical. He would pop off, but he'd back it up, and that's what the game's missing, I think, a little bit. We're also just we're let's hug everybody. We slide hard. Well, you can't even slide hard in a second anymore. We get up. Let's dust the guy off and apologize for whatever.
Yeah.
The game. I don't get it.
I feel like someone at any moment is going to pull a scorecard out of their back pocket and put something in pencil and then put it back.
Oh yes, are you kidding me? See, we're not even going to need coaches anymore because that used to be the coach would be on the bench directing these guys. Hey, move over left and right, whatever. Now they just pull out their card. It's like, gosh, dog it. The pitchers.
I was upset when I don't remember what year it was, but you couldn't bowl over the catcher anymore. And I think they changed it all universally in all leagues at the same time or whatever. But
the Buster Posey rule.
Yeah, I just kept bowling over catchers though. I just thought that
it was part of the game, man. Right? It was part of the game. In baseball, you don't score a lot of runs necessarily. It can be low score. Hockey, not every game's 5-4 or 10-9, whatever. Not like football and basketballs and all that. So that the name of the game scoring runs, man. And it's hard to score him, so you better score him. So if it means knocking a guy over, if he's blocking the plate, what's wrong with that? I mean, you're trying to keep him from scoring the run. I don't get that move. If two or three guys were getting severely injured every year, costing them a career, disabled, or at least one guy every year, I could see it. Guys got hurt, in the 100 years, but not that many. And then, my thinking was always, well, okay, if you don't want your catcher, if your catcher is like future Hall of Famer, you don't want him getting injured, tell him, hey, don't block the play. Just let that guy have it, right? But the other guys on the other team, if you want to block it, block it.
It is baseball. Baseball communications between teams is like Vikings. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not really, it's kind of counterintuitive. It's like you get brushed back, and so the next guy, you're just like, and I'm gonna guess brush him back too, but then you accidentally hit him, and then all of a sudden the bench is clear. But when the bench is clear, it's funny because the people running from the bullpen are like, I'm going to run, but it's going to be too late. It is hilarious to me that the base brawl was able to sustain itself for as long as it has.
Hey, James, it's terrible. It's not, hockey. When they fight, or at least when they used to. I mean, they were getting after it, right?
Yeah.
In baseball, what happens? You get
It's just
occasionally
Nolan
you
Ryan.
see
It's Nolan Ryan, George Bell, and everyone else, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Occasionally you get those guys, he gets drilled and he goes right out there, right? Now the catcher can't stop him. The pitcher's got to decide, right?
Yeah.
But what the majority of them would do, they'd sit there, they'll do this, and then they'll start jawing at the guy, and then they'll wait till the benches start to come out there because they know something's going on. And then when everybody's around, they'll make their move, knowing that somebody's going to grab them, they can't get out there, And it's like, come on, man, if it bothers you that bad, go get the guy, But hey, when you're saying about the bullpens running in, we lost a great reliever that Benoit that one year. He came in from bullpen. We had a brawl with the Yankees. He blew his calf out. We couldn't even use him in the playoffs.
Like, if you don't run, are people like when they get back to the bullpen and be like, yeah, we'll fucking deal with that later, Sam? Like, is it like one of those things, or?
Oh, you better get out there and defend your teammate. You're darn right.
That's what I mean. That's why it's like Vikings, like roar, like just
but
the guy pulls a ham, right?
But the Vikings are actually cutting guys' heads off.
Yeah, so they got a purpose for running, right?
Right.
Yeah. I want to pull this.
Josh Donaldson was in the Vikings series.
Yeah. So this is another quote from the book. Speaking of Donaldson, one thing I learned with teams, you just sort of mentioned this earlier. One thing I learned with teams that I had in Toronto, we had some guys that weren't necessarily very, very well liked around the league. Great players, but they were emotional. Jose Bautista, Josh Donaldson. Being respected is different than being liked. People viewed them as whiners. And also, Jose Bautista, was that, he used a beard dye, right? Like, he must have. It was just so dark and theatrical, his beard. And I used to think that he used it as pine tar, secretly or something, just to get an edge. But were they whiners, really? Both of them?
Yeah, there's times they got a little carried away, but they were viewed that way. Whether they, in other
I feel
teams,
like when you say whiners, you don't mean it in exactly the way that I think it. Like,
whiners not like pissing and moaning at a kid that whines about it. He lost his dog or somebody took his toy. These were guys. They would, when I say whiners, they whined about the strike zone. The umpires making calls on them, right? And these are two of the greatest players, in baseball, right? So, and there were a lot of times they had a beef, because the umpires, but they were always that way. So now the umpires are starting to stick it to them a little bit. So they had a beef, but they caused some of their own problems too, right? And it just they would get brushed back pretty good. Pitchers would throw at him. Batista got thrown behind a few times. Yeah. Donaldson got buzzed pretty good. So that's kind of what it leads to. I don't look at whiners. I think in a lot of ways can be a good thing because it helped us out in a lot of ways too, I think.
Donaldson was the first major league player that I had ever seen sort of take an aggressive stance against a manager. I had never seen that before. I've seen Dennis Rodman do it or something, but in basketball, but never in baseball. Was that the only time that a player had ever done that? And I'm not trying to throw Donaldson under the bus. He was emotional at the time. He just struck out for the.
Are you talking about with me?
Yeah, when he struck out and threw the bat there.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's that story. You know what? Josh and I had a great relationship, right? We still keep in touch, right?
Yeah. I'm not trying to make news.
No, I know.
I've never seen a player do that before in baseball.
No, but. No, I don't. I know to say that. I don't think I had. But we had this. He was pissing and moaning because he thought he should have had the day off. And I know I told him before the game, you need a day off. And if I don't know who's right or wrong, but I can only trust myself. He said, "No, I'm good." And I said, "Well, I'll DH you to give you a break, right?" Anyway, DC Sabathia. So anyway, he goes up there and he punches him out. You can always one thing when you're managing a baseball team, right? You do it every day. I can always tell where guys' heads are at, right? Whether they're in a good frame of mind or whether, if they're struggling, if they're volatile type guys, it's almost watch out, right?
Yeah.
Get out of the way or get ready for something, right? And so I kind of knew I had that feeling after that first at bat, because he's looking at me, right? But we had that kind of relationship. And then the second time, he waxed the guardrail. Then, but wait a minute, I'm standing right. That ain't gonna happen, man. That, you can go beat your head up against the wall all you want, but I'm not gonna suffer the pain, man, for you doing something stupid. So he went down there to the bat rack, and I said, I ain't gonna sit here and
Yeah.
So I went down there. We said a few things. And Tulo, anytime there was a little dust up or whatever, Tulo's always the peacemaker. He gets in the middle, and he's a voice of reason. So it turned out to be nothing. But you know what? That wasn't the first time we had anything like that. And put it this way, there was. I always thought it was important especially on those good teams. Everybody knew where everybody stood, There wasn't, I had no problem listening to their bitching and moaning and voicing their opinion. And I'd ask them for advice because they were that good and they were that intelligent baseball guys. Right. But they also had to know that, there's somebody steering the ship here too. It ain't just a bunch of guys, out of control too. Right. Because that's the way, that's the way it's gotta be.
The idea of catchers becoming managers is perhaps a little overblown. But there is no doubt that a catcher has a different perspective on the game. It's the way they view it, looking out at everything. The nuts and bolts of baseball games are the pitching and catching, since there is so much of it. You can't be a rockhead and go back out there. What hurts the game now is that in high schools and colleges, there are coaches that call every pitch. So some catchers have never called their own pitches once they get to pro ball. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. Now when I was in high school, that wasn't the case. I guarantee you, probably over 95% of the colleges, major colleges, including the pitching coach or the manager calls the pitches. Same thing in high schools nowadays, Wow. And I'm telling you, I don't get it, but
that's like the baseball equivalent to not learning cursive.
Exactly. Okay, if the crying out loud, if the coach or the manager was that smart, he would have been a better player and wouldn't have to be a coach or a manager, right?
Is that a Billy Bean joke?
No, that's my own. I would have never gotten to coaching and managing if my career had been better, because I would have made more money. I wouldn't have had to do this.
Do you have a friendship with Billy Bean? Because you don't seem to like the direction of baseball that he helped usher in.
Oh, Billy and I are tight. Billy,
Okay.
In 1983, the Mets had 3 first-round picks. Darryl Strawberry was number 1 nation. Billy Bean was the 23rd pick, and I was 24, all with the Mets. And we became friends. We were very good friends. I went out and lived with him one winter. I think it was 82 or 83. We had a pickup league. Pro guys would play the San Diego State in some games during the winter, right? Mm-hmm. And so we always kept in touch over the years. Billy was one of the most talented players I had ever seen, right? But he you want to talk about a hothead, right? And
it was his mental game, wasn't it? That
got in his way, man. And I think he always regretted, because he was a stud high school quarter, 6'4", man, could fly, got a cannon. At a high school, he was going to Stanford. John Elway was there leaving at the time, was helping recruit him, right? And I think he always regretted not going to play football. But anyway, he was so hard on himself, and he couldn't slow the game down, and he was very emotional. It's like some of the ways like Donaldson and Batista, but they figured it out, right?
It's a weird game like that. Like when you're in a slump, you're not seeing the ball in the same way. Your stance could be identical. It is so much about mental game. It's
with confidence, man. If you're not confident when you step into that box, forget it. Even the greats, man. If for some reason their confidence is off, they think something's a little out of whack. It's tough, man.
Part of me wants to sue my baseball coach from Little League because he taught me how to throw a curveball when I was 12, and now my rotator cuff is just fucked for the rest of my life.
I agree with you, man. A huge mistake. Well, and then of course, if they're calling the pitches, that's all they're throwing, because they know them guys can't hit it if you got a decent one.
That's right. So tell me, we have a little bit of time left. Tell me about why you wrote the book now. Is it something that you expected to do as a project? No.
James, I'm telling you, honest to God truth, when I got fired at my last home game when I was leaving in 2018, right? I became really good friends with damn near every person in the media, press, that covered.
You're like the only guy that's ever done that.
Well, you know what then it was? I like these people, man. They're good people. You know what? Just because somebody writes something bad about it, if the team's crap, the team's crap. You can't expect good things when things aren't bad, right? But it doesn't mean they're bad people. They're out to get you. And so I kind of befriended them. And so 3 or 4 of them after the end of the day there in 18 when I would never be back. They said, "Hey, if you ever write a book, I want to write it." And I told a couple, I said, "Remember a book? Really? You kidding me? No, he's going to read my book." I said, I wouldn't even read it. Really, that's what I was thinking. So I said, "Okay, well, we'll see what happens down the road, right?" That was never an intention, because I didn't think I was worthy of a book, what have you. And so
that's why you're worthy. You're a funny mix of humble and go fuck yourself. Like it's great, like you have that range. You have that range inside.
I told you I was corralled too much as a young kid, man. See, now I'm letting go. I got to let some go. I got to question authority, right?
I could visualize that injury that you sustained when you were a kid, when you had the stick in your hand and you jumped and then it went through the roof of your mouth. I was totally right there with you, and it was so funny the way you put it. You're like, that lady was right. You shouldn't play with sticks.
Yeah, hey, you suffer the consequences, man. That's the only way you learn, right? Sometimes it's harder than others, but.
And that was Puerto Rico, right? Wasn't it?
Puerto Rico, yes, Ramey Air Force Base.
What's the baseball culture like in places like Puerto Rico and other places like that?
Well, to be honest, I've never been down to winter ball where it's crazy, right? I know all these guys come. I was so young when we were stationed in Puerto Rico, I wasn't playing baseball, but just from we did remember when the Expos when they were at the tail end when they were going to send them to DC, they played like 4 or 5 series down in Puerto Rico, right? Remember that?
That's right. Yeah.
And we were one of them, so we went down there. We played at this little stadium, but the people were nuts, man. They filled that place. And I've always heard, you go down like the winter ball and in different Latin American countries, it's like it's like a religion, right? And you see all the great players that come out of it. But, in some countries you'll go, they say, there's cops with machine guns in the crowd, to keep it under control. Go,
yeah, that's right.
But there's these, it's like, it's really, it's their whole life. I don't think they play any other sports. Maybe they play soccer, but I don't know if they play anything else.
In West Palm Beach once, something happened that made me never seek another autograph again as long as I lived. I went to see, how like the Yankees and the Expos shared a facility in West Palm?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So we went to Randy Johnson. It was like his first spring training game ever, and they didn't have a jersey that fit him. So they had to get some weird shirt with masking tape that said R. Johnson on it, right? And Delino DeShields and Marquise Grissom were both rookies. I think it was right around that time. Anyways, Don Mattingly was standing outside after the game or whatever, outside a bus. And I'm like 9 or 8 or something. And I'm like trying to get through the crowd. I kind of even feel stupid then. I'm just like, what am I doing? Right? And then I get trampled. And then all of a sudden a hand gets pulled in. And sorry, I got Don Mattingly's autograph, but he just did a weird look away sort of scribble that didn't look like a signature. And I get pulled out and I look up and it's like this old, like Latin couple or whatever. And I'm sitting there kind of scared. I don't know where my dad is. And they're like, don't worry, we take care of you. And then all of a sudden Andres Galarraga walks up and it's his parents. And
is that right?
Yeah. And then my dad shows up and he starts signing autographs and everything. And I'm like, I'm bleeding and shit. And like, but I was, but you're in the book. The reason why I bring it up is because in the book, it's really neat to see how you reflect as an adult signing autographs with the kid that once used to seek them. And that is sort of why you sort of end usually on a note like, oh, it's not always fun to sign autographs, but I get it. It's sort of my role. I like that,
Yeah. Well, I think I talked about it, but I don't even remember what I'll put in there. But when you mentioned Puerto Rico, when I was living down there, our next door neighbor, this woman, her brother was Mick Tingelhoff. He was the center for the Minnesota Vikings. He was eventual Hall of Famer, right? And so he come down there in the off season because he was Puerto Rico, visit his sister, and so they were our neighbors. So I got to meet him. I was young, but this is Mick Tingelhoff. He's a Minnesota Vikings. So at that point, so I started writing letters to every player on the Minnesota Vikings for an autographed picture, right? And you would not believe.
Oh, you were that kid, eh?
Yeah, I thought, what? I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try that. You would not believe how many nice 8x10 photos I got signed by the different Vikings players, and I thought, for those guys to do that, so that's pretty. And I put them in a big old scrapbook. That meant the world to me, right? So later on, when I'm just some days, I don't want to sign a daggum autograph, but I remember I'd look back and say, you know what? They did that for me. Even then, they sent me a nice picture. I'm just signing a little crappy card, I said, hey, but speaking of Mattingly, though, this year you can go back out there and get a real autograph because he's.
That's right. Why did you? Why do you think? And will it stay this way that you only managed one team in your major league managerial career?
It's a good question because I've been on some other interviews. It's weird, and I thought,
Only the
Cito,
Canadians will take them.
Cito Gaston won 2 world championships right there. He's
Yeah.
never managed another team. How does that happen?
Oh, that is weird too, isn't it? Yeah,
And he won the whole shebang twice.
that is weird.
It's like, I don't know. It's is that the curse of Canada or what?
Yeah, well, the Raptors definitely had players had an aversion to Toronto, but I think it was for good reason. I'm one of those people that like hated the launch of the Raptors. I thought we were the Barney team. That's what Americans called us, the Barney team. And I thought I was really embarrassed because it was like Jurassic Park's popular. Let's make it a dinosaur. Like, and that's all the thought.
Yeah, that was yeah.
I like their branding now. I like We the North, so I'm fine with it or whatever. But at the time, I just couldn't stand it. But this, yeah, the Toronto, the way it's so funny the way that we pick our teams. We vote for them online, or at least at the time, I think we were like, or we was mail-in ballots through the Toronto Sun or something like that. But yeah, I'm not a big fan.
That's how you guys selected the name Raptors every time.
Yeah, there was like a voting, like it was like between that and the Towers and something else. And it was
You think that's why they changed the name to like the Cleveland Indians and the Redskins and all?
well,
Maybe they're gonna have to change the name to the Raptors or what?
I'm gonna say it because I thought of this years ago and I even put together a package, honestly, for Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. I was that crazy about this. I think that the Raptors should change their name to the Toronto Streets. And it should be like one of those neat names that are kind of like abstract, but still kind of cool. It takes care of the hip hop culture. You could say from downtown Yonge Street, from downtown Queen Street. No, because we're the streets. It has all these marketing and branding things. And it's not a fucking dinosaur, John. Like
I agree. It's not Barney. I know what you're talking about. Hey, Barney, we got big old purple Barney here over there.
That's right. That's right.
But then I guess you got the last laugh when they won it all a few years ago. It's kind of.
That's right. So do you see yourself ever managing again then?
You know what, James? I would love to. I went down after the Astros had this cheating scandal.
Yeah.
Just taking a job with the Braves. My guy Alex Anthopoulos is running it over there. And the owner for the Astros interviewed me. I went down there. I felt really good. And then the next day, Dusty Baker came in. Dusty got the job, right? But that would have been ideal because they've been closer to home. And then 2 weeks later, the Red Sox called because Joey Cora, who was involved in the Houston deal, he was under investigation because when he went back to Boston. So I went up to an interview for that, and they told me in that one, well, if there's not anything here, and we're just gonna. He had been suspended. He was being suspended anyway for the year at Coro. We're just gonna stick with Renicky, but if there's something there, you'll probably be the guy, But
do you have a reputation in the league? Like, are you kind of like he's a little bit of a wild card? Like, do you?
Well, I had James, good question. I don't know. I had a couple dust ups with players early in my careers. I don't regret any of them, but. I've even asked some of these general managers because the analytics is so big in baseball now, right? Yeah. And I think I got I'm viewed as anti-analytics, which is so far from the truth. I don't get carried away like a lot of guys do, or like I think we've gone way too far. But I think that's kind of stuck with me in its. I don't know if they think I'm a. I'd like to do things my own way, but I'm as big a team player as you're going to ever have, and I think my greatest trait is my loyalty. But I think for myself, And but so I don't know what the perception is, to tell you the truth.
I'm with you on that stuff. I think that there's an intangible part of baseball that is hard to sort of figure out. Like the pitcher's on the mound and maybe like he takes a breath and his anxiety is just all of a sudden like out of nowhere because he realizes the bases are loaded. He can't remember the sign, and all of a sudden the game is about to change on a dime because of a mental thing. Like the analytics can't touch that shit. They don't know what's going on in the brains of players. So while over a long period of time, the analytics might technically be correct, there's these little pockets in there that are blessed with people like Kirk Gibson, and people, you know what I'm saying? So,
hey, James, analytics are good. Baseball's always been about numbers, right? And numbers don't lie. My big really only issue with a lot of it is, I watch games nowadays, right? They yank guys left and right, like, and you're wondering why, right? But what I've learned since I started playing baseball until my last day as a manager, on any given night, it might be that guy's night, right? He may be Joe Blow, just get called up. He may be on that night, and I've witnessed it. And you know what? and if you take him out too early, I don't understand that, and you look over in the other dugout and they're going, hey, thank you very much, asshole, man. With the guy, we couldn't touch this guy. And now you're giving in the game swings, right?
Yeah.
And not only that, and so if it's one of those nights for whoever it is, let him go, man. And then, if he gets in trouble or you know when it's time, or they say, well, maybe he manages by his gut too much. No, I manage by my eyes. My eyes tell me. It's not my gut. My eyes, man. I'm watching it. And also we kill the bullpens down there because we don't leave the starters in. And if I'm an owner of a team and I'm paying a starting pitcher $100 million a year and he can't go more than 5 innings, I'm wondering why the heck not.
Yeah, and also if they're star pitchers, they should travel with the team.
Oh yeah. Well, you know what? Well, I don't know what you're referring to, but I know.
I'm referring to Roger Clemens, I think.
Oh, did Roger not travel?
He did that when he was in Toronto. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, we'd always send if we were playing a late night game and we were flying somewhere the next day, we'd always send the pitcher out that day early so he'd get there and get a good night's sleep. But I wasn't aware. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
He had the hammer, man.
I'm such a purist, eh? Like I'm such an asshole about it.
Well, team, man. It's called team, isn't it?
What? Okay, let me ask you this: what do you think of the in the neighborhood call for the double play at second?
Well, we ain't got that anymore, man. But I used to be fine with it, unless it was to the extreme.
Really, I hated it. I get so angry about it. You especially when you're the guy sliding into second, and dude, some of the good shortstop would wink as they would purposely not hit the bag and still get called out, and you'd still get called out, right?
But I think they allowed it because that was a way of an infielder protecting himself, right? If he's got an anchor down on the bag, and that's when you could slide hard. Yeah, that was a way they come across there, and if it's close enough, okay, they'll give it to him. Now, you're right. You'll see some that are not even close, and they don't change it, or they call them out. And you're going, okay, that's where an argument, man. There's your entertainment. That's right. But I think what the rule now is a joke. Are you kidding me with this thing? That you can't go in there and break up a double play, really? Infielders used to learn how to keep from getting hurt, right? So and it goes back to like the catcher. If guys were getting hurt all the time and careers were ending because of it, okay, I get it. But this was a Chase Utley rule. It happens, but it's very rare, And then one last thing though, why you got to be fired up, James.
Yeah, go ahead.
This rule now, and I don't know if it was the COVID rule or what it was, or speed up the game. Major League Baseball, in extra innings, start with a runner on second base. Are you kidding me? That's literally, they play they don't do it during the playoffs, but the last 2 years. If the game's tied at extra, it's going extra innings. Each team, they get a shot at scoring. They start with a runner on second base, no outs. I'm going.
That's literally. Yeah.
But it's come on. Oh,
wow, God. That is awful.
Sometimes,
yeah.
You know what though? You know what?
And then inexplicably, sorry, John, but I have to say this because I still think it's ridiculous. What is it, Houston, that has that fucking mini putt feature in center field that you got to run up like you're a goddamn bionic man or something?
Well, no, they did. They ended up. They got what that was called Hal's Hill.
Brought to you by Cirque du Soleil. Like what's happening?
Well, they ended up changing, putting a fence out there because they, guys be running up that thing, fall down, break their neck.
My God, your Achilles. One guy who had it ruptured his Achilles because you're like running uphill like as fast as you can go. Only Bo Jackson.
Where's the? I'm sure they got to seek approval from the league. This is how we want our field to look. Like Toronto's going through.
I don't know. They got some weird mafia exemption because they're the only place that actually had.
Hey, well, though, in the old Yankee Stadium. I guess they where they keep the monuments, the old,
was it?
They used to be, they didn't have a fence there. The monuments were in play, but it was way the heck out there. So some guys would hit balls rolling around the monument. That's the story I heard.
Off Babe Ruth's cheek, onto the ground. Yeah.
I don't know if Babe had any inside the Parkers, but he might have.
John, listen, thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate your time. I could talk to you for forever. I've noticed that baseball and hip hop, are like cousins for me because I could just sit there and shoot the shit about it for forever.
I can sit here and talk baseball and country music with you. We can go that route too.
Country music and hip hop are cousins, my friend, because they're both telling it like it is for the people singing the song.
Right? That's a good point, man. Never thought of that.
Yeah, and they're and they
one just keeps it a little cleaner than others most of the time.
Well, that's because rappers know that you're not supposed to like perform in cow shit. So. The book is called Gibby, Tales of a Baseball Lifer.
Hey, what do you think of that picture, by the way? How's that picture? Do I need to change that real quick?
I mean, you're probably laughing at the umpire splitting his pants, but do you think it was difficult to find a picture of you smiling on the field? Is that what you're saying?
No, if it wasn't good enough, I
Oh, it's a great picture. Yeah.
I think I got another month to change it, maybe not.
No, you're good. You look exactly like an executive would look at you and be like, I'm not sure about him, guys. I'm not sure.
You know, people say, I don't know what your opinion is. They say, hey, you look like Jack Nicholson, the fat old Jack, with the hair. I'm going,
yeah, you
really?
look like Jack's like half brother, the mistress kid, right? Like
big boy. There you go.
Gibby, thank you so much for joining us, buddy.
James, my pleasure, man. Good meeting you. Enjoyed it. We'll do it again, huh?
Yeah, definitely. Let's do it again, sir. You have a good night.
You too, pal. See ya.
All right, buddy. Wow, what a great guy. That was fun. That was really fun for me. I haven't talked baseball in a long time. Baseball was like, if there were like 4 pillars in my life of major things, it was baseball from like age 5 to age 20. And talking to a guy like that is just really fun. He had an interesting career. Injuries sort of thwarted it. He was a first-round draft pick, and now he is, he's been retired from managing for a while. He's only managed the Blue Jays. He had a really good record with the Blue Jays. Best you can hope for in baseball, anyways. It was above 500, but he managed 11 seasons. But what a great dude. He's funny. He's affable. He's clearly authentic, and that was a really good time. What day is it? Tuesday. Yeah. I have a show tomorrow. The guest hasn't been confirmed, but what I'm going to start doing now is, as a way to sort of alleviate as well the stress I feel whenever I can't book a guest or when a guest cancels, is do solo shows. I've been thinking about it for a year, and I just didn't want to do any solo show unless I knew what I wanted to do. That didn't include just a meandering conversation with nobody for 20 minutes, because I'd blow my head off if I had to listen to myself for 20 minutes meander. So instead of meandering, perhaps something a little bit more organized. So that's about all I'll give you for now. But it's going to be done in such a way where the content should be evergreen enough where I'm taking on sort of broad issues and almost like an essay form, and maybe bringing on a guest for 5 or 10 minutes, just to sort of round things out. But we'll see how it goes. And then, of course, on Friday, the triumphant return of Casual Friday. I haven't decided what I'm going to do this week or how many of my regular listeners I'm going to piss off. Sorry, Emil. Sorry, everybody. It's 2 weeks in a row, Danny B and Emil. I think you guys should get married. That's what I think. No, I'm just kidding. I hope there's no hard feelings with anyone, because I don't think about things long enough to really mean anything, with malice. And it's been a crazy week. David Wallace was on yesterday. The Regina police chief, Evan Bray, was also on. That was a really interesting show. And I got to put the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church into his ear. And tomorrow I'm going to follow up by sending him a whole bunch of news articles dealing with the cult, so that a powerful police officer in the province of Saskatchewan can perhaps be of the opinion that there is a crazy fucking lunatic cult operating in Saskatchewan. And so that was a fun interview. And we will see you tomorrow and Thursday. I just don't know who yet, and I don't know what the solo project is going to be. And I've never been this tired. And my kids have stayed home from school, at least one of them, for like the last 3 weeks because of sicknesses and the million fucking snow days. Like, what do they think? Are snowflakes like peanuts, and we're afraid like the allergic kid is going to die? What's going on? No offense to people that die because of peanuts, at the Target. But I don't understand. Parents, let me ask you this. I have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. if they cancel the buses, they keep the school open. But if your kid goes to school, they don't learn anything because they don't actually teach lessons. Because they say they don't want those kids getting ahead. Getting ahead of what? It's not a fucking race. If you're at the school, if you made your way to the school, you should expect to learn when you arrive in said school. Maybe do review. We just came out of a pandemic. Perhaps now is not the time to have like 8 unscheduled PA days every single month because the bus can't travel in 1 centimeter of snow. Just risk the lives of our kids and drive that fucking bus to the goddamn school, guys. I like ranting. Ranting's fun. I'll see you next time on Blackballed.
Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed.